Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone. So we are continuing with our chapter-wise analysis of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and today we will be overviewing chapters 4 and 5 of the 4th canto, continuing from our discussion in the previous chapters. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Jaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaimadirayed. Nashta Prayeshu Vadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Seveya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Mukam Karoti Vachalam Bangam Langhayate Girimyat Kripatam Hamande Sri Guru Dinatarinam Brahmantamadhavam Sri Chaitanya Iswaram Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nidinamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschadideshadarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So in chapter 3 we see how Lord Shiva and Devi Sati, they are having this conversation, and Lord Shiva is advising her that it would be in her best interest not to go. And so that is where it stops. Now in chapter 4, we continue. Maitreya is telling Vidura that Devi Sati, she was very, very agitated in her mind, and she was going in, going out, expressing a very agitated state of mind, because on one hand, Lord Shiva is advising her not to go, and on the other hand, she is very eager to see all the relatives who have assembled at her father's house. So, because of that natural family affection that Sati Devi had for her family members, tears started flowing from her eyes. And she gives one look at Lord Shiva as if she were going to blast him with her vision. So she gives a very terrifying look at Lord Shiva as well. Very easily understandable for the Grihasthas. Thereafter, Sati left her husband, Lord Shiva, who had given her half his body due to affection. Breathing very heavily because of anger and bereavement, she went to the house of her father. This less intelligent act was due to her being a weak woman. So that is Maitreya Muni speaking about Sati Devi. Tato vinishasya sati vithayatam shokena roshena cha duyata hrida pitror agats trayana vimudhadir ghran premnat manoyordham adat satam priya. So Lord Shiva is very dear to Sati Devi, and Sati Devi is very dear to Lord Shiva. And so, out of affection for her, Lord Shiva has given half of his body to his wife. So Srila Prabhupada says this is how a Grihastha is acting, and how by mutual cooperation Grihasthasrama goes forward. But sometimes here, as Maitreya Muni says, due to her womanly weakness, she did not heed the good advice provided by the husband. When they saw Sati leaving alone very rapidly, thousands of Lord Shiva's disciples, headed by Maniman and Mada, quickly followed her with his bull Nandi in front and accompanied by the Yakshas. The disciples of Lord Shiva arranged for Sati to be seated on the back of a bull and gave her the bird which was her pet. They bore a lotus flower, a mirror, and all such paraphernalia for her enjoyment, and covered her with a great canopy. followed by a singing party with drums, conches, and bugles. The entire procession was as pompous as a royal parade. So Sati walked out of Kailas all by herself, and immediately the disciples of Lord Shiva made all the arrangements then and there, because after all, she is their mistress, the wife of their master. So, like this, Sati is reaching the place where Daksa Prajapati is doing the yajna, and while all the Vedic stotras were being recited, there were a lot of great Maharshis, Brahmanas, there were Devatas, and there were animals for the sacrifice, as well as there were so many different types of kalashas made of different type of metals, everything. Everything that is required for a great yajna was assembled there. When Sati and her followers reached, and because all the people assembled there, they were all afraid of Daksa Prajapati, nobody received Sati Devi except her mother and her sisters. They had tears in their eyes and they welcomed her very warmly, because they were very, very happy to see her, and they spoke very pleasing words to her. But although they received her with very pleasing words, Sati Devi did not reply to any of what they spoke. They offered her a seat, they offered her various gifts, but she did not speak to them. She did not utter a word. She did not accept anything else. Because her father, Daksa Prajapati, completely neglected her. Neither did he look at her, nor did he inquire about her welfare. So this upset Sati Devi very greatly. So, and also, while she looked at all the oblations that were kept for various devatas for the yajna, she saw that there is no oblation for her husband, Lord Shiva. And he did not invite Lord Shiva. And when Lord Shiva's wife, because now, although she is his daughter, she is also the wife of Lord Shiva. So, on that level also, Sati Devi should be respected and received accordingly in the yajna. That also did not happen. So, she became doubly angry. One, that as father, he did not show any consideration. Second of all, as the wife of, exalted wife of Lord Shiva, also, she was not shown any consideration. She was not given any respect. So she became very, very angry, and she looked at her father as if she were going to burn him with that look. So such a terrifying look Sati Devi was looking at Daksha Prajapati. The followers of Lord Shiva, the ghosts, were ready to injure or kill Daksha, but Sati stopped them by their order. Because she was very upset, and although Nandi and everybody else are there, and they would attack immediately, because they know that the mistress is not happy, so they would attack, but she stopped them. And she was in such a mood that she started condemning this whole process. And she started speaking very strong words against her father in the presence of that entire assembly of people there. She says, Lord Shiva is the most beloved of all the living entities. Nayasya lokesthyatisayana priyas tatha priyo deha pradham priyatmana tasmin samastat manimukta vairake rite bhavantam katham pratipayet. She says, Lord Shiva is the most beloved of all living entities. He has no rival. No one is dear to him. No one is his enemy. No one but you could be envious of such a universal being who is free from all enmity. So, typically, like the Lord, when he says, Samo aham sarva bhuteshu in Bhagavad Gita, and Lord Shiva is a plenary expansion of that Lord. So, he is also Samoham sarva bhuteshu. He looks at everyone equally. And she says, to such the most exalted person, such a most exalted person, you are envious of. How can this be? Doshan paresham hi guneshu sadhavo Rinnanti ke chinna bhavadrishodvija gunamscha falgun bahuli karishna mahattamasteshva vidat bhavanagam. She is now saying, hey, Daksha, a man like you can simply find fault in the qualities of others. Lord Shiva, however, not only finds no faults with others' quality, but if someone has a little good quality, he magnifies it very greatly. Unfortunately, you have found fault with such a great soul. Here, Sati, she is addressing her father as twice born. Grinanti kechinna bhavadrisho dvija. You are a dvija. You are a twice born person. You should know better. But instead, what are you doing? You are finding fault with Lord Shiva, who is such a great personality that even if he sees some fault in other people, he does not look at it upon as a fault. So, Daksha, the enviousness of Daksha is so horrible that he could find fault with even Lord Shiva. And then she continues, it's not wonderful for persons who have accepted the transient material body as a self to engage always in deriding great souls. Such envy on the part of materialistic persons is very good because that is the way they fall down. They are diminished by the dust of the feet of the people. He says, this is nothing but the way for you to go down. And she says, dear father, my husband Shiva, that two letters, Shi and Va, purifies all sins. And his order is never neglected. He is always pure and no one but you has envy. She says, Lord Shiva is such an exalted personality that in the entire creation, nobody has got any enviousness towards him. Why? Because he is such an exalted personality and he is also Bhutanatha. He is showing, he is giving shelter to the most fallen. Also, he is giving guidance to all the fallen people and he takes them under his shelter. So such a personality, actually nobody can be envious of, but you are so unfortunate that you are envious of him. And Lord Shiva is a friend of all living entities. And for the common man, he is fulfilling their desires. And for the other people who desire transcendental bliss, that also Lord Shiva is arranging for. And she says, do you think that greater, more respectable personalities than you, such as Lord Brahma, do not know this inauspicious person who goes under the name Lord Shiva? He associates with the demons in the crematorium. His locks of hair are scattered all over his body and he is garlanded with human skulls and smeared with ashes from crematorium. But in spite of all these inauspicious qualities, great personalities like Brahma honor him by accepting the flowers offered to his lotus feet and placing them with great respect on their heads. She says, for you, you can only see that inauspiciousness. that he is wearing ashes from the crematorium. He is wearing a garland of skulls. So for you, he looks inauspicious. But do you think somebody who is your father, Brahma, doesn't he know? And then why is it that he accepts the flower that is put on the lotus feet of Lord Shiva? Lord Brahma will take it and keep it on. So she says, that is the position of Lord Shiva, and you are envious of him. If one hears an irresponsible person blaspheme the master and control of religion, one should block his ears and go away if unable to punish. But if one is able to kill, then one should, by force, cut out the blasphemous tongue and kill the offender. And after that, one should give up his own life. Now, Sati Devi, she says that because you have blasphemed, either the person who hears the blasphemy should block his ears and go away. But if you're able to punish, cut out the blasphemous tongue and kill the offender, and after that one should give up his own life for having listened to the blasphemy. So now Sati Devi says, because I have heard you blaspheme Lord Shiva, and because you gave me this body, therefore I have now no choice but to give up this body, because if one takes poisonous food, one should vomit it out. So similarly, I have accepted body from you, so I have to give it up. And then she says, because normal people cannot understand how people in Nivritti Marga are acting. They cannot understand, so it is better to execute one's own occupational duty than criticize others. So what she means is that you don't understand Lord Shiva's activities, so you are criticizing. It is better that you only do your duty. Because Lord Shiva is of that level that he does not have to undergo the rules and regulations that is necessary for an ordinary human being. And she says, there is Pravritti Marga, there is Nivritti Marga. Both are given in the Vedas. But if you want to see Pravritti Marga in a person who is following Nivritti Marga, that is contradictory. And for somebody who is situated transcendently, he rejects both Pravritti and Nivritti Margas. And then she says, my dear father, you look at my husband thinking that he is sitting with, ashes from the crematorium all over his body with a skull mala and everything. But the opulence that he has got, you and all your vrinda, all the people who are, paid by you to flatter you, you can never imagine. You can never imagine. And Lord Shiva, simply when he desires, he can exhibit all his opulences. And that can be possible only for renounced, self-realized persons like Lord Shiva. She says, you are an offender at the lotus feet of Lord Shiva, and unfortunately, I have a body produced from yours. I am very much ashamed of our bodily relationship, and I condemn myself because my body is contaminated by a relationship with a person who is an offender at the lotus feet of the greatest personality. So she's very nicely putting it. Although that is in the mode of ignorance, but she's expressing it very nicely. That you offended Lord Shiva, and I happen to be your daughter. And my present body is given by you. And she says, because I am your daughter, Daksha's daughter, Shiva calls me Dakshayani. And the moment I hear the word Dakshayani, immediately I become unhappy. Why? Because that reminds me of you who is envious of my husband. And then Maitreya Muni says, so she decides to give up her body. She sits down facing north and she goes into yogic trance, and there accordingly she will give up her body. Thus, in order to give up her body, which had been so respectfully and affectionately seated on the lap of Lord Shiva, who is worshipped by great sages and saints, Sati, due to anger towards her father, began to meditate on the fiery air within the body. Thus, Sati Devi gives up her body. And she actually enters into the next body. She will enter into Menaka's womb and then she will be born again. So, simply because she did not want to continue her association with an offender to Lord Shiva, she decided to give up her body. And Maitreya says that, Daksha, although he was a Prajapati, it is very, very surprising that he even did not show respect to his own daughter, Sati. First of all, she was his daughter. Second of all, by association with Lord Shiva, she is also a very great personality. And he said, Daksha, who is so hard-hearted that he is unworthy to be a Brahmana, will gain extensive ill fame because of his offenses to his daughter, because of not having prevented her death, and because of his great envy of the Supreme Lord. So all people, the moment Sati Devi left her body, the entire Yajna Vedi became, there was so much of disturbance going on. And those people, the disciples of Lord Shiva who accompanied Sati Devi, immediately they want to attack everybody, including Daksha. So they draw out their weapons. But immediately Bhrigu Muni, who is conducting the yaga for Daksha, immediately he will make some offerings into the fire, and some fiery personalities, they will come out of the fire and they will immediately, they are called Ribhus. So they come out of the fire and they will counterattack all the ghosts and Gutyakas, and thus, having no other choice, they will leave Shiva's assistants, they will all leave, and then they go. Then Maitreya says, when Lord Shiva heard from Narada that Sati, his wife, was now dead because of Prajapati Daksha's insult to her, and that his soldiers had been driven away by Ribhus, he became greatly angry. So Lord Shiva, because after all, it is his wife, so he gets very angry. What does he do? He will simply pull out one hair from his head and he will throw that hair on the ground. And from that hair comes the demon Virabhadra. A fearful black demon as high as the sky and as bright as 3 suns combined was thereby created. His teeth very fearful and the hairs on his head like burning fire. He had thousands of arms equipped with various weapons and he was garlanded with heads of men. That is how Virabhadra appears. The gigantic demon will stand in front of Lord Shiva, Anjali Baddha, asking, what should I do? So he says, Lord Shiva says, you are born out of my body, so you are my chief associate. Immediately go and kill Daksha and all the soldiers at the yajna. So Maitreya says, this is none other than the personified form of the anger of the Supreme Personality of God. And the only purpose of Virabhadra's existence was to execute this order of Lord Shiva. So immediately he will do pradakshina of Lord Shiva and he will leave. So he's carrying a great Trishul. He's carrying a great Trishul. The Trishul was looking so blazing and so great that it is said that even Lord Yama became scared looking at Virabhadra carrying that trident. Lord Yama is the Lord of death, but he got scared simply looking at Virabhadra. So imagine how scary Virabhadra was. So they started moving towards the sacrificial arena of Daksha, and the entire place, the entire region became filled with dark clouds because these people were moving in such a hurry and there was so much dust was being created in the atmosphere. Everything became very, very dull. It was like a shamal in the desert, dust storm that you see in the deserts. So they all started wondering, from where is this huge dust storm coming? So Prasuti, Daksha's wife, immediately she understood. So she says, this danger has been created by Daksha because of the death of Sati, who, even though completely innocent, quit her body as her sisters looked on. And then Prasuti says, at the time of dissolution, Lord Shiva's hair is scattered and he pierces the rulers of the different directions with his trident. He laughs and dances proudly, scattering their hands like flags as thunder scatters the clouds all over the world. The gigantic black man bared his fearful teeth. By the movements of his brows, he scattered the luminaries all over the sky and he covered them with his strong, piercing effulgence. Because of the misbehavior of Daksha, even Lord Brahma could not have saved the great exhibition of anger, saved him from the great exhibition. So, the situation has come to such a critical level that even now Lord Brahma cannot interfere. So people were talking, they were saying, no, even Brahma cannot help this Daksha like this. So Lord Shiva's followers, they come, all four sides of the arena is covered. They all had weapons and they were all looking very, very horrible people, because Lord Shiva is Bhutanata, all the Bhutas and Pishashas, Bhukyakas, everybody is there. And the army is filled up with those kind of creatures. And all the soldiers started running hither and thither. Some of them hid in the women's quarters. Some of them went and hid in the kitchen. Some of them went and hid wherever they could, So Daksha's soldiers were trying to escape, and Lord Shiva's, the entire gang of Bhutas and Pishachas, they came, they started pulling down, the whole Yajnavedhi. And some of them were passing urine into the, the Yagavedi. So they had one single point agenda, that is that this Yajna should be completely destroyed. And the sages, the Maharshis were trying to flee. And Maniman, one of the followers of Lord Shiva, arrested Bhrigumuni, and Veerabhadra arrested Daksa Prajapati. Another follower named Chandesha arrested Kusha. Nandiswara arrested the Devata named Bhaga. And they started throwing stones. The priests could not sit. They could not perform the yajna. And Veerabhadra, he tore the mustache of Bhrigumuni. And this Bhaga, his eyes were pulled out by Veerabhadra, because this Bhaga was looking at Bhrigu. When Bhrigu was cursing Lord Shiva, he was looking and moving his eyebrow this way and that way. So Veerabhadra said, because you had eyes that you were moving this way and that way and enjoying Lord Shiva being cursed, no, you need not have eyes. And then there was another Pusha who was smiling when the curse was going on. So just like Lord Balarama knocking off the teeth of Dantavakra, Veerabhadra knocked out the teeth of both Daksha and this Pusha, because both of them were showing out their teeth when Lord Shiva was being cursed by Bhrigumuni. Then Veerabhadra, the giant-like personality, sat on the chest of Daksha and tried to separate his head from his body with sharp weapons. He tried to cut the head of Daksha with hymns as well as weapons, but it was still hard to cut even the surface of the skin of Daksha's head. Therefore, Veerabhadra became exceedingly bewildered. Then Veerabhadra saw the wooden device in the sacrificial arena by which the animals were to have been killed. He took the opportunity of this facility to behead Daksha. Upon seeing the action of Veerabhadra, the party of Lord Shiva was pleased and cried out joyfully. All the Bhutas, ghosts, and demons that had come made a tumultuous sound. On the other hand, the Brahmanas in charge of the sacrifice cried out in grief at the death of Daksha. Veerabhadra then took the head and with great anger threw it to the southern side of the sacrificial fire, offering it as an oblation. In this way, the followers of Lord Shiva devastated all the arrangements for the sacrifice. After setting fire to the whole arena, they departed for their master's abode, Kailasa. So that is how Daksha becomes beheaded simply because of his unimaginable enviousness towards Lord Shiva. So, this is a very important and interesting character study in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Daksha as a Prajapati. Why is it an interesting characters to study? Because Daksha Prajapati, by virtue of him being a Prajapati, is definitely a very important person in this whole chain of events, as we understand. He is Brahma's son. He is married to Prasuti, and is one of the in charges of the universal affairs, managing the universal affairs, assisting Lord Brahma. So, therefore, he is a very important personality. He is a very key personality. He is a personality in a leadership position. To the extent that all the others, Prajapatis, were like subordinate to. To that extent, Daksha was powerful and had such heavy responsibilities. But why did he lose his head? Literally, he lost his head because previously he lost his head. You understand? First, he lost his head due to enviousness, which made him physically lose his head. And why? Why did he become envious of Lord Shiva? Because he felt that Lord Shiva did not respect him. It is not that Lord Shiva did not respect him. Daksha felt that I did not get the respect that I deserve from Shiva because I am Prajapati. So if everybody can stand up, including the Devatas who have come, why can't this fellow stand up? So he was thinking like, you see, so pride. Although pride is allowed for the Devatas, for the Kshatriyas, for these Lokapalakas and everybody, they all have some amount of pride because of the responsibility they have and because of their intelligence and the ability to get things done, etc. But when you express that in front of somebody of the stature of Lord Shiva, so it is always very, very important to understand that one should, whatever one's position, however elevated one's position may be in the Varnashrama system, in the universal affairs, if one offends a great personality, one will definitely meet with fate that is similar to Daksha. So this is what we learn. And to the extent that we see that when his own daughter, in spite of not being invited, she came to attend the yajna and to see the family members. And even at that time, because of his enviousness for her husband, he did not even consider his own daughter. See? Because his enviousness had reached such a stage. So that is why we say that envy is the biggest impediment in spiritual progress. Enviousness is the greatest impediment. And like Srila Prabhupada says, envy is one thing that cannot be dovetailed in the service of the Lord. Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada. All these things can be dovetailed in one form or the other. Matsarya cannot be dovetailed in the service of the Lord. Enviousness you cannot do anything with it. So what should one do? One should completely give up enviousness. There is no other way. All other things can be converted, can be metamorphosized into something else, and then that can be utilized, etc. But enviousness, there is no go. And that is what we learn from the history of Prajapati Daksha. And we also learn from Sati Devi that how sometimes due to womanly weakness because of excessive attachment to family, how things can go wrong. Srila Prabhupada in those purports explains at great length as to how one should take the instructions and the suggestions given by how a Grihani should accept the instructions and suggestions given by the Grihastha Pati, and listen to good advice always, because otherwise what will happen, that it will lead to one, to the extent that Sati had to give up her own body. And why was she pushed into that? Because the Pratyaksha Karana, as we can see, the obvious reason is that she did not heed the good advice given by Lord Shiva. Instead, what she did, she got very angry and walked out on Lord Shiva. Because in the previous chapter, we see how very gently Lord Shiva is advising Sati Devi. It is not a very fiery exchange between Lord Shiva and Sati Devi, where she also very subtly she expresses a desire, and Lord Shiva also very subtle manner, very gentle manner, he tries to make her understand that your going would end up in great calamity. Because what happened, not only did she lose her life, her father lost her head, an entire cursing episode happened, and then there was a huge war, a lot of people lost their lives. All, when we trace it back, where do we trace it back to? Sati Devi not heeding the advice of her husband, Lord Shiva. So, these are all the lessons, takeaways that we get from these two chapters of the fourth canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So, we'll stop here. Hare Krishna, Srimad Bhagavatam Granth Raj Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada.